Poverty in contemporary Britain. My name is Bukola Ayedun Daniels. This is Unit 12, Poverty in Contemporary Britain. Before I proceed, I would like you to look at the table of contents, the introductions, and evaluation of absolute and relative definition of poverty, and explanation of how poverty can change in Britain, and analysis of different methods of measuring poverty, and the conclusions and reference. The introductions. The concept of poverty can be understood through two primary lenses: absolute and relative definitions. The poverty line in the UK is defined as a household income below 60% of the average. Relative poverty, on the other hand, define poverty in relations to the economic status of the other members of the society. The Prime Minister described social exclusion as a shorthand label for what can happen when individual or area suffer from a combination of linked problems such as unemployment, poor skill, low income, poor housing, high crime environment, bad health, and family breakdown. Absolute poverty means plain absence of elementary human requirements, include food, water, hygiene, amenities, well-being, housing, education, and information. An individual is considered relatively poor if their income and resources are insufficient to obtain the type of food, participate in activities, and have the living condition and amenity which are customary or are considered desirable in the society in which they live. Absolute poverty aims to identify those living in extreme deprivation globally. Relative poverty, such as the typical use quota in UK, which describe poverty as having an income underneath 60% of median home revenue, capture poverty in the setting of a precise society existing ethics. Other methods include the use of deprivation indexes, which assess poverty based on their inability to avoid a basket of essential goods and services, and subject measures, which rely on individual self-assessment of their financial situations and well-being. Each method provides a different perspective on the extent and nature of poverty. Then we'll also look at the explanation of how poverty can change in Britain. How can it change? Historically, poverty are often considered by absolute deficiency with extensive lack of basic requirements. Poverty has always been a tax for people throughout the antiquities. Poverty was a mutual consequence in pre-medieval civilization due to features such as inadequate resources, economic disparities, and absence of communal care grip. In the 18th and 19th century, saw swift development and technological advancement through the Industrial Revolution, leading to notable renovations in economics and society. Nevertheless, in modern Britain, early 20th century efforts to advance existing situation, and hence poverty amidst the peripheral communal transfer program. While absolute poverty still occur, relative poverty has developed a more prudent concern. This shift reflects the overall increase in living standard and widening income inequality with the country. The United Nations established the Millennium Development Goal in the year 2000. The effect of poverty, such as poor physical and mental health, homelessness and food insecurity, lower educational achievement, increased stress and social exclusions, and higher crime rates in some deprived communities. United Nations established the Minimum Development Goal in 2020, as you said earlier. Poverty rates fell in the year after 2010. as the UK recovered from the financial crisis, but are now showing clear signs of rising again if time is not taken. Relative poverty is when household receive 50% less than an average household income. So they do have some money but still not enough money to afford anything above the basic. In 2016-2017, relative low income rate include housing costs will have fallen from 22% to 18%, for children from 30% to 26%, and for pensioners from 16% to 11%. The government outlined the universal credit replacing 6 benefits with one single monthly payment and demand as food bank. The origin of poverty in Britain include joblessness and low wages, high housing costs. Some social support system has been reduced over time. Limited qualification can reduce employment opportunities and family circumstances. The government and the charities attempt to reduce poverty through welfare benefits and universal credit, minimum wages policies, free school meal, food banks, and community support program and affordable housing projects. The government outlined and financial variation has played a vital part in determining this tendency, with areas of economic development occasionally increase poverty rate while collapse the veracity actions have regularly worsened. Organizations such as the Tusell Trust and Shelter play important role in supporting vulnerable people. Then we moved on to the analysis of different methods of measuring poverty. There are different methods. Various methods are employed to measure poverty, each with its strength and weakness. The most common approach includes absolute and relative poverty line, as mentioned earlier. Charles Booth conducted an extensive study into poverty in East London. Booth has abandoned ambitions for a few in politics in order to concentrate on social research. Both found the 35% of people living in London East and East End were living in abject poverty. Rosary distinguished between primary poverty, in which people's incomes were low to enable them to avoid the basic necessity, and secondary poverty, in which incomes were sufficient but were being spent on other wasteful things. The three measures of poverty in UK include household 60% below average income, persistent poverty, and absolute low poverty. People are relatively low income living in household with income below 60% of median in the year. People in absolute low income living in with income below 60% of median income in base years. To measure whether poverty is absolute or relative, you first to construct threshold and collapse data to calculate the overall number of people who could be considered poor. Relatively poverty in the main measure used today because in practice it indicates the number of households that have been relatively left behind from the households that are currently enjoying a good standard of living. The government announced plan to develop a new measure of poverty in UK using research from Social Metrics Commission as a starting point and building upon it. It plans to publish the new measure in 2020 alongside the low income indicator it already produced. In conclusion, poverty in modern Britain is thoroughly connected to inequality, increasing existing costs, and access to opportunities. Poverty in current Britain narrates to the state where individuals in the United Kingdom lack sufficient revenue and capital to uphold a rational standard of living. It remained a major social and economic issue despite Britain being a developed country. Thank you.